Hello everyone, good afternoon. So today we thought we would take you through the two of the most important parameters the industry is measured with, productivity and efficiency. This is of course internal to an organization. Of course there are many parameters which are measured which are external to an organization. So let's look at these are the two most important parameters which are productivity and efficiency. I hope all of you have been able to see my screen. If you have any difficulty, kindly go on the chat mode and you could send the message so that our admin team would be able to address that. So productivity and efficiency, as I mentioned to you, are often confused. Two most important parameters for any organization, be it a company or any entity for that matter in business or in services or products. Both these parameters directly affect the bottom line of any company, and we often wonder why we see some of the companies doing better and some companies are doing not so better. So essentially the ones which are doing better are serving the needs of the customers effectively and efficiently. So these are the two most important parameters any company is measured with. So let's look at basics in terms of definitions. Of course, many of these parameters we need to always know a little bit of basics so that our fundamentals are very clear. So these are the two most apt definitions that I was able to find or figure out. Efficiency is the amount of effort that it takes to accomplish a certain operation or a task. The productivity is a measure of how much of work is done in a certain amount of time. So you need to differentiate between these two things. Productivity is always measured with respect to time. In case of a manufacturing company, let's say, its amount of output or parts per hour, which is measured in terms of the effort that goes into making it. So we need to identify these two differences between efficiency and productivity. So let's look at these definitions in a little bit more detailed manner. Efficiency is the ratio of effective or useful output to that of the total input in any system. So the amount of output per unit of input, be it labor, equipment or capital. So there could be efficiencies measured in each of the different areas. When it comes to productivity, there are many different ways of measuring productivity. So let's look at a factory and a services sector. In a factory environment, productivity is measured based on the number of hours it takes to produce an item or a good or a product. Whereas in the services sector, typically it's a service that is generated or given by an employee, which is always measured in terms of the revenue generated against the compensation of a particular employee or an operator. So this is the two areas, but of course there could be different definitions based on the industry that you people are coming in with. So before we get on to this measurement of these two parameters, which are prime parameters of productivity and efficiency, let's look at how a business is run. Here on the screen you see an example of a project. So not necessarily it represents just a generic representation of a particular project based on organization or a company. So if it is a product, probably the parameters could be slightly different. So just as an example, let's take this as a business to know the business process flow. Typically most of the businesses work on a particular process that is set inside an organization. So it starts off typically with an inquiry, and then the inquiry, after discussing with the customers and all that, negotiations and all that, it gets turned out into a purchase order, and then it later on, once the purchase order is received by the company, so for a project-based nature, it goes into a design, then the approval, engineering, procurement, manufacture, inspection, assembly, testing, and customer inspection and dispatch. So this is a typical scene that I'm trying to tell you. The primary objective of me trying to project a process is to see that first and foremost thing that you need to get into an organization, that there is a process that exists. It could be different for different customers and different products and different applications. Just to give a thought, where do I measure efficiency? Where do I measure productivity? So first of all, you need to map your business processes. That's very important. So this gives you an overview of how the processes are typically drawn out. In terms of organizations, most of the organizations, what happens is as the organization evolves, so typically we have departments which are typically called as functions, And just to give an example about what is a functional organization versus a process-driven organization. So the functional organizations typically is has different functional silos like marketing, manufacturing, testing, shipping, and customer support. Just to give an example. So each of these functions consists of a set of people who do that particular task. And most of the organizations are function driven. That means the marketing does something, then after that they transfer it on to the manufacturing department or a design department, then it goes to a testing department or a section, then it goes to shipping, then it goes to customer support. So typically this is something like a customer. Supposing I am the customer who has given you an order for a particular company. So the customer is treated something like a tennis. So from one court to another court to another court, it keeps on shuttling in a typically function-driven organization. But in the case of a process-driven organization, what happens is a customer support or a customer or a quality is again seen across all the functional silos. You see on the left-hand side the processes typically, it could be sales, management, production, quality, finance, HR, human relations, human resources, or customer support. So these are the things which need to be seen in all these silos. How is the customer treated, or a customer order is treated in each of these? So the process owners, you need to identify process owners in your organizations who will take care of these processes. So these processes needs to be handled in various departments to make them more efficient. Let's look at how process-oriented organizations work and what does it involve to learn about the process, because we are primarily interested in controlling the processes, making it more efficient and productive. So first and the foremost thing that one needs to do is to map your business processes. And after having mapped it, you need to analyze it from an external perspective. You should not get involved in a process. Analyze it from an external perspective. How does somebody looking at from an external perspective see it, visualize it? Then we need to adapt this processes to customers' needs. There is no point in doing something which the customer does not want it. So you need to identify and keep looking at whatever process that I'm thinking or putting it in my organization, does it help the customer? That's the most important thing. And these processes, whenever we are drafting it or making it, we need to make it pretty easy for customers to do business with you. That's very important. So then we need to keep innovating to exceed or to meet and exceed the customer expectations. So, and then one of the foremost thing that we need to do is what I already showed you in the previous slide. The traditional functional thinking is very obsessive, and we need to change that to a process-oriented thinking, something like an end-to-end process. That means make processes a way of life in the organization. That everybody talks about a process, be it welcome a guest or being it collecting an order or meeting a customer. There is a process which the company is recognized with, so that this is the way that people do the work or do a process in this particular organization. So make it like a process-driven organization. It's very, very important. So and then for each of these processes, establish a process owner and empower them. I get a sign that there may be some audio disturbances. If there are any disturbances, kindly SMS or kindly put on a chat line. I guess you're able to get back on track. We're able to hear me clearly now. So these processes, be it customer driven or quality process or a production process. So each of these in your organization, establish a process owner, which is very, very important. So then a process owner is somebody, let's say somebody is in charge of quality. So this particular person who is in charge of quality has a cross-functional effort to see that the quality is established as per the requirement of the customer across all the functional silos, not necessarily in a quality department. Quality is not just left to the department's initiative, and then only that quality department worries about quality and everybody else doesn't worry too much on it. So this is not a quality for a process-driven organization. So in a process-driven organization, the quality initiative or a quality process owner sees to that every quality process that happens on behalf for the customer happens with ultimate quality requirement that what the customer wants it. So that is something is a process-driven organization. So and also these process-driven oriented organizations train trains each and every employee clearly and understands the company's business processes, so that each of them who is doing this work, his or her work, understands what he or she is supposed to do very clearly. And one of the foremost thing that we need to do, supposing the fundamental precept is whenever you want to control something, the primary thing that you need to measure it, be it productivity, be it quality, be it appearance, customer service or support, whatever it is, if you want to control it, first of all, first thing that you need to do is to measure it. So let's move on to the action items, what we are supposed to do in terms of in these areas, how to build a process-driven organization. Primarily, first is the study of the processes, then innovating the process to finding out whether whatever process that we have been doing for a particular customer, is it required, is it needed, does it add value? So these are the things that we need to look at, and we need to identify these time wasters. There are plenty of areas, processes which are done in any particular organization where you can find very unproductive, quite a few unproductive works in the process over a period of time, or because of the legacy of the organization, we would have built in a lot of these slacks. These slacks needs to be identified so that we make it more efficient. So each and every task needs to be broken up in small chunks and then evaluated whether are they really adding value to my end customer. So if you are able to assess this, then you will be building a very efficient organization. So work out an overall effectiveness in terms of keeping a long-term approach rather than a myopic or a short-term approach. So in these areas, we need to work, wherever areas that we work, then we need to train and inculcate a process thinking down the line so that it doesn't depend on people. People understand and then they contribute. They say this is the way things are done in my company or done in an organization, so that everybody needs to understand that. There are plenty of items which are left out, which we need to discard, so that probably because of historical reasons we would have accumulated so many things along. So that's an area that one needs to look at, and invest in proper tools to improve productivity. And then we need to give importance for preventive maintenance, because these are things which are very important to see that your organization is run pretty effectively. The area people maintain their own work areas, so that becomes part of the culture, and you can adopt tools like Kaizen. Kaizen are the tools of continuous improvements. So you can form a small group, which the people on most organizations think that most of the ideas and innovativeness has to come from the top, which is again a misnomer. So involve the people on the shop floor, or people or the operators who are excellent doing the work, so that they're the guys who know exactly what they're doing in day in and day out, so that they can contribute for innovation, so that they come up with better ideas how things can be done. Statistical quality control, and things like TPS. I think a few of you might have heard about the TPS. Quite a lot of this thinking of the productivity tools have been coded or come together. They've all been put together in this TPS called the Toyota Production System. So I put a graphic at the bottom left-hand corner, which will give you a bit of that, just to give it an idea. These are the kind of tools that people use to make them more productive and more effective. And one other thing is most important thing that you need to do is to incentivize. If you want to look at higher productivity, primarily once you have to measure the productivity. Having measured productivity, we need to incentivize it. So let's look at my couple of some more slides that I have, which will talk about how to incentivize this productivity. Of course, the lastly but not the least is one of the most important things that one needs to look at in any industry is the industrial safety. So whenever you have a safe working environment and the safe machines, so obviously there is a better manpower utilization on machines. So this is something which is also part of the tool, which enhances productivity. We were discussing the concept of productive hours. I'll spend a little bit of time on this, so that this could be a new concept for a few of you. So the concept of productive hours is something like I measure whatever work that is done in an organization or a company or a factory. Every productivity measurement is reduced to productive hours. So the concept of productive hours is I split the task into different processes, could be task 1, task 2, task 3, etc. And for each of these tasks, I establish a metric or a measurement. So that means, for example, I'm doing a particular, let's say I'm doing an assembly. I get about 2 or 3 parts, and I join these 2 or 3 parts, and then I tighten the nut with a particular torque, and then see that the assembly is in line and all that, and then it passes on to the next operator for a particular work. Let's take a simple task like that. So how do I measure my productivity? My productivity of measuring an assembly or productivity of measuring my quality inspection could be different. So in order to standardize all this, so what we are proposing is, what the best proposed solution is, to reduce all the productivity measures into productive hours. Irrespective of whatever I do, work I do, ultimately I measured in terms of productive hours. Supposing I work for 1 hour, and in 1 hour I produce, let's say, about 10 or 20 good, highly efficient and high quality products that I produce, which is again checked by somebody else. So if I'm able to produce, let's say, 20 in an hour, and that is the average, that means you collectively put together a group of your people who are pretty good at doing a particular task, and then you start measuring, timing them, and then say they are able to produce about 20 or 25, and then they could be the operators with a lot of experience. Obviously, your production line might have some people who are still on the learning curve. So in that case, probably you put a factor of that and reduce it. Say instead of 25, you say let's about 20. Supposing an operator does a particular 20 assemblies per hour, so then there's a credit of 1 hour to him. If he is able to do 25, then there's a credit much more than an hour. Though the work that is done in 1 hour, he gets a credit of maybe 1.5, 1.25 hours. So that means he is more efficient than what your average person. So that means an average person, what you pay is, let's say, 100%. So this guy is compensated more than 100 because he is able to do with his own skills. He is able to do much more than what an average person produces in 1 hour. So he gets more. There are people who produce less. Let's say produce about 15, then they get less than what an average. So this helps us putting a metric. So once you have arrived at these productive hours for each of the tasks, you measure everything. Do not, as long as the particular process is in the chain, from the time of receiving an order to shipment, put in all the processes, and then measure each of the processes with respect to the team or to the particular individual who is effective or who is contributing to that particular process. So then you measure this net productive hours. Let's say one of the good metric is to measure all this productivity in terms of a week and in terms of a month. So collect all these productive hours, say for about a month, and then one of the important things that while measuring the productivity, we need to keep it in mind that we are not just interested in getting more output, we are also interested in getting the quality output. That means I don't want him to produce all the 20, in about 20 or 25 that he produces an hour, few good and few bad and things like that. Well, there's an acceptable limit. Let's say you're allowing 0 defects. So that means you're expecting all 25 to be good. Supposing if he makes one mistake, which is not permitted, then in that case he doesn't earn anything. So that means it's a net PHR is nothing but a productive hour earned minus the deductions due to poor quality. So these quality parameters that you establish in the organization should be established based on your experience at each of these functional process levels. And then having accumulated all this productive hours, irrespective of the skill set, now that we have removed the skill set out of the system, what we have done is somebody is highly skilled, he is able to do some particular activity, and then he earns 1 hour. That's what he's supposed to do, and so accordingly he's compensated, he's paid more. Somebody is just doing a work of, let's say, packing, which is probably a low skilled job, but he is supposed to do, let's say, about 30 packings per hour. So he does 30 in a quality way, he also gets 1 hour. Of course, his compensations are based on their particular scales and things like that. We will look at the compensation in the next slide. So once having done all this, accumulated all the productive hours, you rank them in terms of display and then put it on the board. So only the biggest thing that you need to take care here is to see that your measurement is transparent across the whole organization. That's very, very important. And then once it is transparent and everybody is aware of it, then display it on the sheet, let's say maybe every week or every month, so that in terms of ranks. So in terms of rank, so that each of them know that where they stand with respect to the productivity measurement. And then you evolve a variable compensation based system based on these net PHRs. Then, and these metrics, having done one, they're not cast in stone. So you need to look at how to fine tune this so that you keep on raising the bar. So inculcate a culture in the organization that these metrics are not just target. Don't fix targets. These targets can keep going up and up depending on the skill sets and training, etc. So based on this, including your annual increments, which are typically done in terms of by grouping people like A, B, C, or 1 or 2 or 3 increments, they can be, instead of that, you can always give them a percentage based compensation based on the productive hours that they earned in a particular month or a year. So let's look at the chart, which will be probably more clearer to you. So this is a chart typically for a compensation which is based on productive hours, which has got a fixed component and also a variable component. So let's say the fixed component, irrespective of how many hours productivity he puts in, so it comes to about, let's say about 30% or 40%. I'm just giving an example. So depending on your area of industry, you could choose how you would like to take this. So let's say 175 hours per month. So that means whoever does 175 hours of productive hours, these are not clocked hours. These are hours earned. That means if I produce 20 goods per hour, I earn 1 hour. Like that, you go on accumulating that, and then measure it in one particular month. If a particular operator, skilled worker is able to produce, let's say 175 hours, that means he is 100%. That means he has done his job. So anything more than that he produces, he gets an incentive at a higher curve. You see the incentive curve rate going up beyond the target is much steeper than the one it goes between the fixed component and the target. So these things which give him, the company also gets benefited and the individual also gets benefited. He's got more motivation to work. But only thing is fixing up these targets for individual groups needs to be thought about very carefully depending on what sort of organization that we are dealing with. So if you're fixing up a target for an operator, so easy to fix 175 hours. If you're fixing up a target for, let's say, for a group leader is supposed to, let's say, a group leader is supposed to work and take care of the entire group of about 10 people. That means he gets the average of all those 10. And also, there is some amount of work that he is supposed to do, so there is a separate measurement of that. Let's say 10% of he is supposed to do an actual work, and another 90% factor is given to what the group leader is supposed to take care of the group. That means the net average PHRs of those people. So likewise, just give an example, there could be many different areas and ways, parameters of fixing the targets. So that's an exercise that one needs to go through that. So let's look at what are the key factors which will help us in getting into a company on a productive mode. Predominantly, these are all people, attitudes, and self-esteem. These are very important for high productive companies, and these depend on the skill levels, stress levels, etc. So there's something which we need to give importance. So we need to provide them with quality tools and tackles. We need to create a suitable working atmosphere and ambience so that you get high productivity. And also create a team, culture of team working. It's very important because not all tasks are individually oriented. Some of the tasks are team oriented, so then they need to learn how to work as a team. And then we need to see to it that the availability of the raw materials and things like that are made available at the right time. Safety of the entire operations is given a thought, and these are all well planned out so that the production systems are planned out far ahead, so that the particular person knows exactly how much or what is expected out of him over a period of time. Some of the pointers for improvement. So one is, if you're already a process-oriented organization, look at how to improve it. If you're not, if your organization is just function-oriented, that means I have only departments, but there's no interconnecting process between them along those departments. So look at changing that culture by setting it up as a process-oriented organization instead recognition and rewards, performance-based compensation, etc. So these are the things that I want to discuss with you people. I hope I slightly rushed it because there are too many inputs that you have. So probably now we would like to take you through some questions and answers. So you could, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer it for them. For you.